What's up, Be Better Tribe? This is your host, Julian Alvarez. It's a podcast where we explore stories, lessons, and leadership journeys that shape who we've become. And sometimes the people who impact your life the most are the ones you meet early in your career, before either of you really know where the journey's going. And for me, that's Brandon Roberts. I first met Brandon when he was playing minor league baseball. My buddy and I, we drove across the country and met Brandon in Scranton, Pennsylvania. So any Office fans out there, you'll know this city well. So we were driving out there. He was playing minor league baseball. My buddy was training him in the off season. Brandon would come back during each summer and go to school to finish his education because he left and went to the minor leagues prior to finishing up. And so at that point, he was looking for a part-time job. And luckily for me, I was hiring sales development reps who were cold calling for MindBody, who are part-time. So it was a perfect fit. Brandon came and worked a couple summers for me, making cold calls, building skills, and learning a craft while he was still competing and training for the minor leagues. And here's where the story is a bit unique for me. I hired Brandon early in his career, and years later, he became my manager. And along the way, he became someone I leaned on for perspective, advice, and growth. It was a kind of full circle moment for me because sometimes it's crazy to think about. I'm hiring an SDR and then them becoming a manager for me. But the reason why it was so beneficial for me as I walk away and look back on that experience is because what Brandon did. During the time that him and I worked together, Brandon was committed at getting better. He was committed in developing himself, and he had this aura around him where he just wanted to get better and grow. He would read all the books. He would challenge himself to think differently. You could tell he was focusing on getting better in sales as a leader and overall just doing everything he can to improve. And he's somebody that I look at as he doesn't just talk about it, he is about it. And he does the behaviors necessary to be successful. And so he instilled a really early on lesson for me of when you really want to start taking your career seriously, and when you start to think about what you're building within your career, you have to invest in yourself. And so that's what he brought to the table. And I'm really hoping that this conversation will bring light of that experience that I had. So Brandon, it wasn't just about titles. It was really about consistency, development, and helping the people around him. So hope you enjoy this conversation. And before that, Brandon has obviously played in the minor leagues for a long time. He has 15 plus years as sales leadership experience, and he's currently the CRO at Boulevard. So let me go ahead and bring Brandon into the call. All right, Be Better Tribe. Like I said, we have welcoming in Brandon Roberts, someone who I've always looked up to, whether that's being a sales leader, developing others, a father, someone that really, in my opinion, continues to get better and grows. As you know, Brandon and I have worked together. What was that 20 years ago, Brandon? We were also roommates. We were also coworkers. There's so many things that we've had pass in our lives. And what's really cool, I feel like it was an instrumental moment. It was early on in my career. It was during a career transition for you. It was one of those things that I feel like we connected at a really pivotal time. And you were a leader that really, I think, changed the narrative for me. You really allowed me to think bigger and think differently about my development. And so for you, Brandon, welcome to the Be Better Tribe podcast. And first question I want to ask is, when you look back at your successes, you look back at being in minor league baseball, going from college to AAA, which is a phenomenal feat, and then obviously going from an SDR to a CRO. You are a top performer in everything that you do. And so first question is like, what motivates you to be the best, and what motivates you to get better every day?
Well, first of all, thanks for that intro, but why are you making me feel so old? Jeez.
Because we are old, Brandon. It's crazy, man. 20 plus years in our career already.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been crazy. I'm super happy to be on this podcast and chat with you. And obviously, as you mentioned, we go way back. Yeah, I would say just motivation. It's really a tough question. I think that it's a tough question because When I think about it throughout my life, I just have always kind of had a little bit of a drive,
Hmm.
to aspire to something bigger than what I was in that current moment, and I probably attribute that to playing sports. Just when I was younger, and even before high school and through high school, there's just always a mentality of you practice, 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 no matter what, and you're always pursuing. You always have a pursuit of just bigger and better and more effective. And some of my role models when I was growing up, like Ken Griffey Jr., I'm a big baseball fan. And once it stuck with me that the best baseball players in the world, like right now, I can use Shohei Ohtani, the best
Yeah.
baseball players in the world, go to the cage and they hit off the tee every single day, like 100 swings off the tee. And you're thinking, they're the best in the world. And they're doing like fundamental practice to continue to improve their skill sets. And, that's what I'm, kind of sharing with my 8-year-old son, who's also playing in Little League Baseball as well. But I think it's just like that was ingrained in me where you kind of have this relentless pursuit towards just continuing to better yourself as a person and yourself as a professional.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. I agree. And it's crazy because, like, I don't know, your friend group, my friend group, obviously we've kind of cross pollinated slightly when we were a bit younger. I don't know. It seemed like there was this like internal innate drive from like our a group of friends and from your executive team that you have now, or the AAA players that you worked with, or the Cal Poly players that you played with a long time ago. Like there is a sense of like this innate drive that people have to find success, and then I feel like there's moments in time where in baseball or in your career, you're going to have a moment where you're like, I can still achieve more. And then there's lessons in there. So, kind of diving into that, like out of the innate drive of just wanting to be successful, are there any life lessons or things that you've picked up that have helped you continue to want to get better?
Yeah, I think about mentality a
Okay.
lot. I think about people's mindsets, and there was a couple inflection moments in my career that I can reflect back on.
Yeah.
And one of them that I specifically remember, I was a young baseball player, and I think had just started at Cuesta, my first year in college. I just was going to do 1 year at Cuesta, and then I was going to go to a 4 year after that. And so I was starting to develop and starting to hit pretty well. And I remember talking to my parents, and I had an offer to go to Cal Poly, and it was a partial scholarship, and they were really encouraging me to go. And I was like, at the time, I was thinking, but what if I play this year and I get an opportunity to go play at like USC?
Hmm.
And they didn't mean anything by it in the moment, but they kind of laughed a little bit,
Like
just
take it, like take.
in a
Yeah.
little way of like, that's a little too big for you, Brandon, and it's very expensive, and you know, like, and so I ended up signing and going to Cal Poly, and like the story's great. I was, had a great time at Cal Poly, no regrets whatsoever. But when I think back to that moment, I think people shouldn't be imposing my ceiling on myself. Like my ceiling is what I choose as an individual, and I can't be influenced by what other people's comments or thoughts or opinions are about how like much potential I have in my career. And so I think it was like I think back to that moment a lot, and my wife laughs at me because I put a little SC sticker. Not that I'm not even an SC fan, but it was
Yeah.
just a memory of me of like nobody gets to tell me what my cap on my potential is. I get to determine that for myself. So I think that was a little bit of a moment and a lesson that I used throughout my career of I can self-impose a ceiling on myself, or I cannot. And I can determine what my ceiling is and think of it in a completely different way with a completely different perspective. and so the framing and the perspective and the mindset is something that I actually think about it pretty often.
That is insane. And you know what's crazy is like I have a very similar story, and it was when I was in high school, and I think I was a junior in high school. And you know what's funny is I was on our JV team for my freshman and sophomore year, and I didn't get to varsity until junior year. And I was on club soccer outside, and I thought I was hot shit, and I just didn't like this high school coach didn't want. I was smaller and whatnot, but like I just had this chip on my shoulder, and he made a comment. Great, good soccer coach. He won 3 CCS titles. It was crazy. Like it was a really strong program, but he made this comment of like, "Oh, you won't play D1. Like you're too small. Like you're not going to play D1." And it kind of reminds me of that. I'm like, it got me, it locked me in my head of like no way. Like I don't care about your opinion. Like it almost drove me more to like expand on. And I actually want to double click into this question. I never knew you went to Cuesta actually freshman year. I didn't know out of high school you went to Cuesta and then you transferred to Cal Poly. How many years you played? 2 years at Poly and then got drafted? You mind
Yeah.
walk me through that story of like, because to me, going in baseball is a little bit different, but you go into a JC and then you go to a D1 program and then you get drafted. Like you got drafted pretty early on. You found amazing success from that transition from Quest. You mind walking me through that journey?
Yeah, well, I was accepted to Cal Poly as a freshman, like
Okay.
academically,
Yeah.
but when you go to a 4 year like that, depending on where you're at as a freshman, you probably are going to redshirt
Yeah.
or
Okay.
not play a whole lot. And so I made the decision to go to Cuesta because I wanted to play and be the starter on the team and just get a lot of reps in.
Totally.
And the coach there was Larry Lee, and he was really a strong coach. And so I went to Cuesta, chose to go to Cuesta. Well, short story, he went to Cal Poly after that and was trying to recruit me to Cal Poly after that. So anyway, I was already academically there, so I only did 1 year at Cuesta,
Got
and
it.
then I moved over to Cal Poly, and I played sophomore and junior year, and then I was drafted when I was a junior. I was 20 years old when I was drafted, and then I went off to play minor leagues.
And I love that. Like, went off to play minor leagues, but then what I really appreciated, you and I met obviously when I was driving with our buddy that connected us, Eric
Hmm.
Schmidt, driving across country. You're in Scranton, Pennsylvania. We
Yeah.
meet you at a dinner after one of
Mhm.
your games. We slept on your floor in the hotel. That was crazy. Like, gosh, living in our what was that, mid 20s, early 20s,
Mhm.
early to mid 20s. But you obviously did that for a long time. You were really successful playing baseball. You're transitioning, navigating from baseball to sales because we met each other. I was hiring SDRs. I had part-time role. I love the commitment from you. You would come back to Cal Poly to finish out your degree, which probably a lot of people do not do in
Took a
minor league.
long time.
Yeah, you took a lot of time, but you did it. You committed to it, and then you came into the sales program at MindBody, and that's where we really like formed the friendship. What was that transition like? What was the transition like from minor league baseball to your career in sales, and how did that? How did your discipline translate into both different roles?
I mean, if the question is very specifically how was the transition, I have to be honest and say it was completely miserable. Because
Totally, that's good though. Like the transition's tough. Tell me a little bit more.
I mean, you think about playing in the minor leagues, you're traveling all over the country, so you're in different places all the time. You are playing at every game is at 7 o'clock, so 7 to 10 o'clock. So like your hours are you don't show up to the field until 2 o'clock, and so you got to get enough sleep, and then so like your hours are just shifted later, and you're on a field. You're running around in the sun on a field, sprinting, getting your body in physical condition and whatnot, and then flip that to go 9 to 5 at a computer. I was not I was not excited by that. So that was that part of the transition, those first 6 months or so, I remember thinking, what am I doing? Um, but I just had to, I had a determination. I was just got married at that point. We were having a baby on the way right away. I just had bought our very first condo, so I had diapers that I got to pay for, and I had a brand new wife, and I was like, I don't care. I am making this happen, and I need to, provide for my family and have a significant income and all that stuff. And so I just kind of put all the transition like frustrations aside, and I just totally dedicated myself to making sure I learned how to be a good salesperson at that point.
Yeah, and I feel like that was you like tiptoed into the sales career by like doing it in the summers as like a summer job, but your main
Mhm.
focus obviously was baseball, and then that flipped, so you had to dive in. And so
Mhm.
this might be a tough question to ask because you didn't go this route, but like I think you and I have both seen it. Like, what if people don't lean in to their career? What if people like don't dive in head first and have those commitments outside of work where they have to make that money? Like, I've seen it, and I just would love to hear your perspective of like if you don't make that decision, you don't commit to something, what are the like kind of what mudslide or like the trajectory of your career? What could that look like if you don't actually like buy into what you're doing?
Well, I don't know what it would look like. I didn't view that as an option, and I think
Yeah.
that as I look back on my career and even my baseball career, I think about how well my skills that I was learning at whatever time period in the past that I was just totally dedicated to compound on each other over
Yeah.
time. So like baseball, I remember when speaking of the transition period, I thought, man, I am so far set back because I just spent 8 years playing baseball and I did not advance in like the corporate world, if you will, to try to get my career on track. But what I was learning was extreme mental skills and grit skills and, you know, like all these skill sets that I could stack on top.
Mhm.
And then I learned to be a salesperson. And then I just dedicated to learn all those skills. And then I was an SDR first. And then I learned how to be an account executive. And then I learned how to be an SDR manager. And so all of those skills just compound, kind of like when you put money in your retirement account and
Yeah.
then it grows by 5%. And then the next year it's a bigger base that grows by 5%. And so I think of that about that. And I also think, I remember at certain points in my career, I was thinking about, I had this mindset that I was behind because I played baseball for so long that I was like, how do I accelerate? How do I accelerate 2 years of experience in a 12 months time? You know, I was thinking about my resume and I was thinking about, trying to go for my first VP job. And I'm looking at my resume and it's shorter than most people because I had those 8 years of playing baseball. And so I was like, well, how do I overcome the, the like blocker that I've got on like the shorter experience period by
Mhm.
just extremely accelerating my knowledge and my skill set in a short amount of time. So I was thinking about that as well, which helps with determination and focus and motivation when you're in your role.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you pivoted that question to like be focused on that piece, and it kind of relates to the next question that I'm going to ask. And I've said it in your intro that I did prior to this conversation. And then when you're on, I don't know if people are catching up to this. I hired you, and then later on, you were my boss. And what you just said to me is why that happened. I was not focused on my resume. I was not focused on crunching 2 years into 1 year of experience because I felt like I jumped into the career at that moment. But like looking at your career now, like you have advanced past virtually everyone that was next to you in that seat, in my opinion. I'm sure there's other individuals, but like you've done such an amazing job. And like I want to go in a little bit deeper into that. Like the unique part of our story is what I just said. You jumped me, even though I hired you, which I think is such an amazing thing to look back on my career because it showed me what I actually needed to do. I needed to focus on the development. I needed to focus on what my next step was. I needed to have a leader that was going to instill that in me and show me what was possible. And I love the story that you have because you did that. And so, if we did focus on that just a little bit, like what types of books did you read? What did you really think about after work on how you can advance yourself? Because there was things that, in my opinion, I saw you do, but I'd love to hear from your words of like you wanting to do it was one thing, but what was like a little bit more tactical, applicable things that you did throughout the 3 to 4 years that we worked together at that transition in our careers?
Well, let's clarify. You left and came back. So there was no leapfrogging happening there, but I,
You
yeah,
stop. One, I did leave, but there's a very clear leapfrog of you in terms of our careers, in
Yeah.
terms of advancement. There is, don't shy away from it. I know it might be hard for you to say it, but dude, you for sure did, and you absolutely earned it. You leapfrogged not only me, there was other individuals that you started to propel past because I believe it was the decisions you made, and that's why I love working for you, Brandon, because you didn't just tell us to develop. You were developing yourself, and it was clear as day, and that's why you were one of my favorite leaders to work for. And so, like, I guess for me, loving working for you because I saw you growing and learning. What were you doing? What were you reading? What are some of the things that like you were picking up on
Yeah.
that helped you get there?
I'll answer it in a couple different ways. So, first of all, one of the things that I've learned throughout my career and even to this day is that as a leader, when you
Mm-hmm.
get into a leadership position, you have to be so comfortable with trying to hire people that are better than you in a lot of different ways, or that have advanced skill sets, or can complement your gaps in your skill sets, or that can push you and challenge you. And so, like, that is something that and that is something that I believe in, where you can't have a fear of, this person's, got more experience or seems like they might be better than me in this way, and feel threatened in a certain way. Like, you gotta
Mm,
hire people that you think are arguably better than you in a lot of different ways, because they have to bring the skills as much as possible. So
totally.
when I had the opportunity to bring Julian Alvarez back in as an SDR manager at that point, it was like no brainer. Like, I was thinking, this is going to level up the team so significantly, and I have to do it, and I love it. And then to your second question, I think early in my career, the book that I read that was game changing for me was Mindset, by Carol Dweck. Yeah, yeah.
Come on, man. I think you made us read that book. It's a
Is that right? And I think that's like, anybody can Google search the growth mindset versus fixed mindset, and you can get those images, and you can get the punchline of the book in a very simple way. But that was when I had left minor league baseball, and I had started pushing on my career, and I read that book, and I was kind of pissed off at myself that I didn't have that knowledge when I was playing baseball.
mm,
Because back to like the ceiling conversation that I was talking about earlier, I was in the same boat when I got to AAA. I went from A ball, double A, triple A pretty quickly in the
yep.
minor leagues. And then I started getting injured and started getting set back a little bit, but that was like not the biggest thing. And then I specifically remember myself in AAA, which, you think about AAA, you're one call away from the big leagues. You are one call away from your childhood dream of playing at the most top level of baseball. And I think back to myself, and I was like, I was not the first guy at the field every day doing extra workouts. I was not doing extra video. I was not doing, and why was I taking it so casually? And the reason is because I was influenced into thinking that I was a career minor leaguer and I was never going to
Mm,
make it. And the guys that make it to the big league are just a step above of where I was. And so I believed that my ceiling was AAA. And I'm like, why did I do that to myself? Why did I have that mindset? Why did I not have some way to generate much more confidence to motivate me to work extremely hard, because I had an opportunity of a lifetime? And
mhm.
so thinking back on that just makes me like, it doesn't make me pissed off. It just makes me not want to do it again, you
Yep.
know?
Yep.
And so when I do it, when I'm a sales manager, when I'm a sales director, when I was the director of sales operations, I was like, I have an opportunity here, and I have an opportunity to be the best director of sales ops I could possibly be. And so it was just helpful to like think back on that and reflect on that growth mindset and that book, from Mindset. But like, other than that, I mean, I've read every single book. My wife has made fun of me because she's like, why don't you read like a murder mystery? It's like
Yeah.
late at night, Friday night, and I'm reading like, sales leader playbook, or customer success, or CEO excellence, or Amp It Up, the CEO of
Yeah.
Snow. wrote the book Amp It Up, which I really learned a lot from. And so it's just like I'm always a student of leadership, is what I would say.
Mhm.
And so I just want every piece of knowledge that I can get, and I just put it in practice in my own way.
You know what's crazy is like, and I want to thank you for that because I think I caught you at that pivotal moment where you were just becoming that type of learner and leader. And I remember I talked to Sebastian Stryker about this, who was actually on our leadership team when you took over.
Yeah.
We'd have and you might think like, I can't believe you remember this, but Friday afternoons from
Yeah.
1 to 2 p.m., you had it every Friday, you scheduled it, and you came in so prepared to educate and coach us. You had a article you read, you had a book that you had a slide deck ready to prepared, you had very applicable things of what you learned and how it can impact us. And I just felt that 3 to 6 months where we were both together under your leadership, you focused on very important development strategies from Carol Dweck, mindset, to Angela Duckworth, grit, to the psychology of selling, to what was the other one that you made us? Oh, sales development playbook by Trish Bertuzzi. Like, and I think at that moment, I just was never dude. I never read a book from front to cover,
Yeah.
ever, ever. Honestly,
Mhm.
like, man, luckily for me, SmartNotes came out in college. Like, but that's sad to say. It was just who I was as a learner. But I do
Mhm.
value, like, what I'm taking away is you had this pivotal moment where the mindset, you learned about mindset and all of that, but then you became a lifelong learner in the role that we're in, which I often utilize now too with my team of like, I didn't choose sales for you, you chose sales for yourself. So we need to make sure, if you this is a career that you want, why not be the best, and kind of give them that first introduction to like the mindset of like, have the growth mindset and then dive in head first, because if you do that, you're going to expand and you're going to grow your career for sure. And so thank you, Brandon. I appreciate that. Like, you might not have thought or even knew how much you impacted me. And I tell this story a lot to my SDR team of exactly what you just said. And I turned from 8 books a year to 12 books to 20 books to 40 books. And so like, I'm around, like, I do listen to them sometimes, but I'm around a lot of those types of books. And we had a book club. We just did Adam Grant's Give and Take, which I think is a fantastic book if you haven't had it. Yeah. All right. So transitioning slightly here. Um, you've already mentioned some of the books that you read. We talked about mindset. I'd love to know, if you were to give a piece of feedback to like maybe somebody junior in their career or somebody maybe where we're at in our career, are there any two lessons or mindset or books that you would recommend for entry into your career, or maybe just stuck in your career and need to like grow into, if that resonates or that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I always recommend Atomic Habits for like starter, like fundamentals of habits and behaviors and just daily productivity for yourself. I'm a big fan of prioritization. I use Panda Planner still. I've used this forever, and it's just because it's got a nice little framework that shows that makes you go through an exercise of things you're grateful for, affirmation, focus, priorities, and so you're just really able to like just list
I
out
love
exactly what you're focused on, because I'm just like so I believe in prioritization, and
it. Yep.
so I think you need to be thoughtful and intentional about your day and your prioritization. One of the things that where did this come from? I think it's a book called "Change the Culture, Change the Game,"
Yep. Okay.
and it goes back to the mindset, because there's this success pyramid, I think it is, and it's basically a results pyramid, and you got results at the top, and then you got what drives the results. So you know this because
I'm laughing because like I just Googled it and it's like, dude, Brandon, you have a slide on this that you taught me like so long ago. But yes, I love it.
well, when results are missing, what do we immediately go to? We go to the activities, like what activities are putting in place. So you and I both have run SDR teams, and it's
Yep.
like, okay, well, if you're not getting your demos, what do the activities look like?
Yep.
But what most people miss is that there's two pillars below that. And so if activities are not there, that's because something is missing in the belief system, which goes back to mindset, which goes back to confidence, which goes back to visualization. I mean, there's so many different mindset strategies. And then the one below that is experiences. So if you just take this one and you just put it into practice, and let's just talk to an SDR for right now. Let's say a brand new SDR starts with a company and they go through their training and then they start calling on prospects and they call 10 prospects and 8 people don't answer, and then one person answers and hangs up, and then the 10th person answers and says something negative and then hangs up. What are their experiences? They've just made 10 dials,
Yep.
and their experiences are that 80% of the people don't pick up, and then 20% of the people pick up and are mean. So then your belief system starts shaking, and your belief system is like, I'm never going to be successful. Wow, this is way harder than I thought it was going to be. Everybody is a jerk in the world, or people don't answer their phones. And then that impacts your activities and your behaviors. And so then you get call reluctance, and then you spend an hour and you sit there and you think, and you're like, well, maybe I should prepare a little longer before my next call, because you're just apprehensive to make those calls again. And then what happens to your results? Well, you're obviously not making enough activities to your results. And so like work yourself down that pyramid and just realize how much it's actually impacting your ability to deliver on your day. Just like today has to be productive. Every single day, every single week has to be productive. And if you just think about those things and understand how your mindset is impacting that, this would be super helpful for you.
I love it. And it actually, I think it helps early on in your career. And I think it helps you when you're in that rut in the middle of your career of like, let me look back the last 2 weeks of the interactions that I had as an executive or senior leader or somebody that's been in your career a lot. Like maybe your team missed quota the last month. Maybe you had a top performer leave your team. Maybe you had something happen. Maybe you had something at home that's been frustrating. Your kid's sick all week, and it's just like the experience of that and like going out late to a meeting. It just compounds, and then it doesn't allow you to take the action you need, and then ultimately it doesn't get you the results. So phenomenal reminder. Appreciate that, Brandon. The last question I always like to ask the individuals that I bring on to this podcast is something to give back to the youth. I think the youth right now we're seeing them get infiltrated with so much information, whether it's negative, positive, whatever the case may be. You have 3 little ones. I have 2, going to be 3 here in the near future. I'd love to get your piece of advice that you give to your kids, piece of advice that you would give to maybe a senior in college, anyone that you feel that, could be getting a lot of information right now. What is something that has really stuck with you over the past, in your lifetime that has helped you, move forward in certain situations in life?
The biggest advice I would give to folks that are earlier in their careers or younger is the concept that I briefly brought up about compounding your skill sets,
Yeah.
because it is really hard to understand that at a young age, and it's hard to understand it early in your career, and you don't really see the big picture when you're first time, junior person in a company. But I think that understanding that if you dedicate yourself to improving your skill sets and your knowledge on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, annual basis, and you try to accelerate that, it will compound in a very significant way over time. And so that is why it is so critically important for somebody in their early career to just be totally dedicated and determined about up leveling their skills at all times.
Yeah.
And then fast forward 10 years and you are just going to look back and you're going to be thinking, wow, look how much I've stacked on my skill sets and look how far I've come. And that's the biggest advice I would give.
I love it. So compounding, it reminds me of Atomic Habit, James Clear, 1% better. Like just
Hmm.
focus on getting the 1% better. And then also like favor the long term, like focus on dedicating yourself like now, and it will come around. Like it will get better. And like effort can't be taken away. Like every book you read or every situation that you put yourself that's going to allow you to grow is going to help you. It's going to make you get better. And as you can continue to like grow, it's going to unlock opportunities. So, Brandon, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you not only as a friend, as a leader, as a mentor. You're an amazing leader, and I appreciate everything that you've given to me. So, I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
super fun. Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me on. Love the conversation.
Awesome. Take care.